And from the main event, we will now transition into the rest of UFC 303 because the fun doesn't stop there. Yes, we got a new main event, but we also got a new co-main event and a new featured bout. There's been a lot of changes to this card, to say the least. Let's get into it. When I look at this new co-main event for UFC 303, it just sounds like a fun fight. Point blank period. It's that simple. Brian T. City Ortega, former featherweight title challenger, current number 3 ranked featherweight in the world, will be taking on the number 14 ranked, highly touted, hottest prospect in this division right now, Diego Lopes, who is surging unbelievably right now. He is white hot with momentum. Can Brian Ortega halt that momentum? That is the biggest question for this one. Brian Ortega bounced back from losing 3 of his previous 4 fights with a huge victory and submission finish over Yair Rodriguez in the co-main event of UFC Mexico City back in February. It was a fantastic fight for as long as it lasted. The tide began to turn. Yair had a good first round from what I can recall, if memory serves me correctly, but then Ortega turned it on, pulled away in round 2, gets the finish in round 3, and it was a huge bounce back victory for T-City. That was actually his first win since beating the Korean Zombie back in October of 2020. Now, in that losing stretch that he had, there was the shoulder injury in the first fight with Yair. That was in the summer of 2022. Then he lost against Alexander Volkanovski in a title fight, and his only other loss was the Max Holloway. That was in 2018, and that was also a title fight. So Ortega has been fighting nothing but the best fighters in this division dating back to 2018 for 6 years now at this point, and he's still only 33 years old, right in that physical prime. I did see, like during the weekend as we head into this week, I'm recording this on Tuesday the 25th, he had said that he was originally slated to fight, I can't remember at what card, I think the Sphere in September, at lightweight. So this is going to be at featherweight as far as I know. That is what all accounts are showing here. And it may just be the final time Ortega competes at 145. But I must say, being that he just beat Yair, and if he can stop the men of Diego Lopes, he might want to hold the brakes on moving up to 155 until he sees what plays out in the title picture, because he's right there for a title shot if he wins this weekend. And Diego Lopes, I mean, this guy in 2023, is it safe to say he was the rookie of the year for the UFC? He debuts in May of last year against the undefeated Movsar Evloev on short notice and takes him the distance in a very, very competitive decision victory that went on the side of Evloev. And since then, he has went 3-0 with 3 first-round finishes. You put those 3 fights together, they don't even make up a full 5-minute round. He beat Gavin Tucker in August of 2023 with a submission. He knocked out Pat Sabatini in November, and then at UFC 300, he knocked out Sadiq Youssef, and that is what launched Diego Lopes into the rankings in this division. One of the most electric fighters in the company right now, and one of the biggest prospects, not only at 145, but of this entire UFC organization. And the other new adjustment to this fight card is actually newer than what it was the last time I covered it, because originally this fight, this is what's funny, is because the 2 fighters fighting now in the featured bout is neither of the 2 original fighters. The original co-main event for UFC 303 was former champion Jamal Hill taking on the number 8 ranked Khalil Rountree. Okay, let's piece it all together here. Khalil Rountree tested positive for a banned substance. He had to be pulled from the fight. In stepped Carlos Alberg. He just entered the UFC rankings after a big win over Alonzo Minifield, 6 straight victories, 5 in a row by finish. He was then going to take on Jamal Hill, former champion. Then Jamal Hill suffers a knee injury in training. He gets pulled from the bout. In steps the man who was training with Jamal Hill for this fight, Anthony Lionheart Smith. He just beat Vitor Petrino at UFC 301 in May in Brazil. So then we have Smith versus Allberg. And then, as of last week, Allberg, actually not even as, well, yeah, as of last week when I'm recording this, but it's not even been a full week since the news has broke on this Tuesday that I'm recording. Allberg is now injured and out, and in steps a ranked top 15 middleweight, Roman Dolidze. So that is the fight. We have Anthony Smith, a top 15 light heavyweight, taking on Roman Dolidze, a top 15 fighter at 185 pounds. And Anthony Smith is actually the betting underdog as of the time I'm recording this. Now, albeit it's not a huge underdog, I believe he's like plus 120, but still, that line's been throwing me off. I looked at that for the first time over the course of the weekend. I don't know. It just doesn't add up to me. He's taking on a guy coming in on short notice, super short notice, up a weight class. Anthony Smith riding momentum, coming off of a big victory over Vitor Petrino. I don't know. It just seems a little weird, this betting line. So be sure to let me know what you think of all of the hoopla surrounding this fight and how we got here, and the betting line between Smith and Dolidze. For what it's worth, Dolidze is coming in on a 2-fight skid, having lost to Marvin Vettori last March and Nasruddin Imavov just in February a few months ago. We have an important fight in the women's bantamweight division as the number 3 ranked Mayra Bueno Silva, who just challenged for the title against Rocky Pennington back in January. She lost that fight. Raquel Pennington is the current bantamweight champion of the world. She will be taking on the number 7 ranked Macy Chiasson, the Ultimate Fighter alum. She's won 2 of her last 3 fights. None more impressive than her submission finish over Pani Kianzad. That happened March 16th of this year. So Macy, very long, very rangy, 9 wins, 3 losses to her record. Mayra Bueno Silva, 10-3, 32 years old. There's going to be a big size difference in this fight. So I wonder that if Mayra can't quite close the distance, it could be a long night out for her, and Macy Chiasson can get the biggest win of her UFC career to date. We have a very highly anticipated bout opening up the pay-per-view main card. Ian the Future Machado Garry, 14-0, a perfect record for the 26-year-old, is coming off of a 3-0 year back in 2023, and he's already gotten a victory so far this year over Jeff Neal. It was a pretty close decision back at UFC 298. He is taking on Michael Venom Page. The 37-year-old debuted in the UFC at UFC 299 and shut out Kevin Holland en route to a unanimous decision victory. Now the man from England will be taking on the man from Ireland, a battle of the UK against 2 top 15 welterweights. Can Michael Venom Page give Ian Machado Garry the first loss of his career? And this fight's definitely interesting too, because we have 2 very high level, very technical strikers here, to be quite frank. And I do worry though that because of their high level striking capabilities, they may have a bit of a feeling out process that may extend into the second and third rounds. It could potentially, I'm not saying for sure, but could potentially be a lackluster bout. But I'm hoping that we are on the side of a very high-level, exciting kickboxing match. Time will tell, but this is a huge fight because Michael Venom Page isn't here for a long time. He's here for a good time, similar to Michael Chandler. He has hopes to reach a title fight while he is in the UFC, and Ian Garry will look to kind of just really right the ship. He's had big victories, don't get me wrong, but sprinkle in all of the personal things that have came into the cage and like a very close split decision with Jeff Neal and just some weird things in the UFC career thus far for Ian Garry, dating back to when he debuted on the very same card that we saw Alex Pereira debut, UFC 268 back in November of 2021. This is a big opportunity for Ian Garry to, I think, truthfully silence a lot of haters. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him here. He wanted to be on this card with his fellow Irishman, Conor McGregor. We know Conor got injured and fell through. Ian now will represent Ireland all by himself, as he's used to doing in the UFC. But at first, those weren't the expectations for this card, and now they are. And from here, I just want to quickly mention the rest of the big fights on this card, not necessarily go in depth to the storylines as much, but Joe Pyfer will be taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. Both of those guys are looking to bounce back from losses. Joe Pyfer had a main event slot against Jack Hermanson in February. That was his first loss in the UFC. And Marc-Andre just lost at UFC 297 to Chris Curtis. Prior to that, though, he had won 2 straight fights. And we all know the hype behind Joe Pyfer coming off of the Dana White Contender Series. The catchphrase, be Joe Pyfer. He has to be Joe Pyfer of the old if he wants to get his moniker back. A super underrated fight between 2 seasoned veterans, Cub Swanson and Andrei Fili, is a banger on the prelims. If you're going to watch any fight on the prelims, actually, there's some damn good fights on the prelims, but don't miss this one. These guys deserve your attention, and it is going to deliver for the fans. Payton Talbott is back. He's the biggest betting favorite across mixed martial arts this weekend with the PFL and the UFC. He is 8-0, only 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken. He's taking on Yanis Ghemmouri. I definitely screwed up that last name, but I'm going to act like I didn't. Payton Talbott, as I said, 8-0, 25 years old, not 23. I was close, right? But 7 finishes to his name out of those 8 victories. He's 2-0 in the UFC. He's a Contender Series alum, and he ran through Cameron Simon in March. So this guy, very fun, unique personality, elite level skills in the cage from what we've seen so far. This is a big time showing for him on a big time card. We have the number 14 ranked Michelle Waterson-Gomez taking on the 15 ranked Gillian Robertson in the UFC women's strawweight division. Michelle Waterson-Gomez actually on a 4-fight losing streak and coming in having lost 6 of her last 7 bouts. The 38-year-old not looking to hang it up yet, but she is facing a big uphill battle because Gillian Robertson has looked very good since coming to 115 pounds. She is 2-1 thus far in this weight class. Both of those victories are by finish, and the loss is to Tabitha Ricci, a fellow ranked top 15 strawweight. So Gillian is coming into her all right now. Michelle Waterson-Gomez looks to be edging the end of her career. 2 polar opposite storylines. That's a big fight. The 45-year-old Andrei Arlovski is fighting again this weekend. He's taking on Martin Buday. It just has to be said that Andrei Arlovski debuted in the UFC at UFC 28 high stakes November 17th of 2000. And we are now nearly 24 full years later, and he is still kicking. And he's still, well, he was still winning, but he is on a 3-fight skid. I forgot the losing streak that he is on. 2 of those are actually by finish. This could be the end of the road for Andrei Arlovski, but if he wins, I could see him fighting until he's about 50. And I mean, come on. The first fight of the night is Ricky Simone and Vinicius Oliveira. What is this all about? Ricky Simone is coming off of a fight with Mario Bautista in January, and prior to that was headlining a fight night against Song Yadong last April. Now, both of those fights are losses, but my goodness, you're going from those big-time fights to now opening up a card. That's pretty crazy, and he's taking on Oliveira, who just debuted in the UFC in March, and probably, as of right now, has the knockout of the year for 2024. He hit a disgusting flying knee against Bernardo Sopai on March 2nd. And prior to that, he got a victory on Dana White's Contender Series in September. So it's going to be a pretty violent fight. So be sure to let me know in the comments all of your thoughts on UFC 303, your predictions for the main event and your predictions for the rest of the card. What are you looking forward to the most? What storylines stand out to you throughout this International Fight Week? Let me know all of your thoughts. Be sure to join the community on social media at the BAJ MMA. And you can follow the show on your favorite audio platform. If you like long-form podcast episodes, they release every Friday and Monday. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and I will see you in the next video.